Hello everyone, I'm Daniel. I'm from Cape Town, South Africa. The flight was 30 hours, so sorry I forgot my tie. I'm currently studying a master's in electronic engineering, and Pius is my university representative over there, and Philip Gerson, he's also from South Africa, but he couldn't make it. So Tesla, they've made a Powerwall, and it's working pretty well, and it's around the world making money, but not in Africa. It's quite expensive. So we've come up with a solution around half the price, and I'm so sorry. And what we essentially created is a Powerwall on wheels. And just so you know, Solura is a combination of solution and solar. So they don't call it deepest, darkest. Press a button. Someone please go next. I'm pressing the next button. Someone please go next. Yes, it's working now. Great. So, they don't call it deepest, darkest Africa for no reason. There's 1.2 billion people in Africa, and more than 50% have no electricity whatsoever. Can you spot all those people? I mean, there's cities everywhere, but you just can't see it. There's 750 million people in Europe. You can see them, all right? There's all the cities. So Africa is as dark as the night. You know, kids, they read by streetlights and paraffin lamps. The fumes are as harmful as smoking cigarettes. Imagine working out 2 plus 2 Pythagoras, or integration by parts, in pitch darkness. Every year, 40 billion hours is spent collecting water by hand, by rivers where electrical pumps can be used. You know, 40 billion hours is the same as France's entire workforce in a year. On top of that, 3 out of 4 health facilities and 9 out of 10 schools, they don't have electricity. And thus far, African countries will fail to reach universal access by 2050. So,
welcome to Africa, a continent full of hopes and opportunities that awaits the right solution to fulfill the ambitions of its ever-growing population. Our conviction? Sustainable energy programs are the solution to Africa's energy crises. Still, 600 million people in Africa lack access to electricity and live in quasi-total obscurity when the sun sets.
So the problem we're trying to address is bringing affordable electricity to the poor. Solar does seem to be the way. I mean, there are alternatives such as wind, hydro, biofuel, and thermal, but they're impractical and cost intensive. And building a power station is quite expensive too. We also want to leapfrog fossil fuels entirely. Why not just skip it and we just go renewable energy? And I mean, also fossil fuels are hard to get rid of once they're in place. To address energy poverty, more of the same may not be the answer. New strategies are needed to scale energy access solutions by 1,000 times. Since photovoltaic cells are becoming exponentially cheaper, different business models are needed than merely selling them cost price plus profit margin. Only 1.8 million people have actually gained Tier 2 energy access by using off-grid electric services. There are 5 tiers. Tier 2 means you can charge your phone and watch TV. That means that of the hundreds of millions of people without electricity, the few who are using off-grid services, they're quite unsatisfied. There are 3 billion people in the world in energy poverty, 1 billion without any access to electricity, and with more than half in Africa. This is a multi-billion-dollar market. Besides taking time to set up solar installations, they still take up a large capital investment. And there are other things to consider, besides equipment costs, such as maintenance, permits, etc. People don't necessarily have money to spend more than $30 per device or per month. which does limit the total addressable market to lower cost solutions. So there are many beachhead markets in Africa, thousands of villages with 500 people or families. They crave the electricity. There's machine shops, schools, spaza shops and clinics. So this is our solution, the Solura Power Wagon. It's basically a quick and dirty way of powering villages who don't have any. It contains an inverter, MPPT solar charger, batteries, wiring, and some solar panels. I'm not being too specific, because there are multiple ways of doing this. We plan to provide Tier 5 electricity, which means that people aren't limited to what they are limited to. They can have as much as they want. So what happens is that once you have a few wagons spread out across the village, it uplifts the area. Demand increases. And when it surpasses capability, we seamlessly pull out and let larger solar companies take over with a more permanent solution. Not before we sell our info and knowledge to them and we recover our costs. We plan to start off with just one village, and then another, and then another, and then you, Tim, and yours, Jennifer's. And it creates a domino effect which allows more economies of scale and for us to strengthen our supply chain. So people, they don't have that much money to give away. We offer a zero capital investment in Solura for a consumer. I mean, they only earn between $550 per month up to maybe $2,000. I mean, if you're lucky. And if they do have generators, they spend about $17 per month. We plan to be a little bit cheaper, around $10 to $12, and we plan to recover our costs on our investment in about 8 months, which is about $3,000. And lastly, we increase the per capita income by 40%, which means that they only spend about 20% on their electricity. So our major competition is generators, but they're noisy and they create pollution. And we want to leapfrog these fossil fuels entirely. So we're not going to bother with those. On-grid solutions take years because there needs to be a power station, lines, transformer. And solar solutions, they just find it a little risky to invest in new areas unless there is demand. Well, our solution has zero upfront cost and is only slightly more expensive than existing solar solutions. And our business model is relatively simple. We identify a village, sell an appropriate solution, install it, and monitor the power demand until it exceeds what we can provide. Then we market it to a larger provider. We estimate a break-even of about $50,000 in 2 years and turning a profit after 3 years. Our gross margin is kept quite low, between 10 to 15 or 20%. There are many solar initiatives and investment opportunities out there. SEA is the only one not for Africa in the corner there, but they offer a 30% tax break in the US. That means that if you plan to spend $10,000 on installing solar, you only have to spend $7,000 in the end. Of course, it's a lot more complicated in Africa if you're actually providing electricity access. But there's people like Power Africa who you can partner with, and they offer their wealth of expertise and investors. Not to mention, we're actually paving the way for companies like all of these across Africa. There's many more. And like I mentioned earlier, people are actually unhappy with their off-grid supply because it doesn't provide enough. And people like these, they're too scared or find it risky to invest in areas while the demand is still low. By providing the power wagon, people can feel comfortable with their demand increasing. And we can pull out of an area having done the hardest part for these companies. If I were one of these companies, I'll be only too glad to invest right away because I know there's a demand. I set up shop and there we go. And we pull out, we cover our costs by selling the info and knowledge to them. the original idea was actually to whip out a phone and see that neighbor 2 blocks down the road, he's got some electricity to share, because maybe my equipment failed, power failure or something. But the problem is there's not enough infrastructure in place, so that's what we need to deal with first. That is the model we're going for, and by providing quick, dirty electricity, we fast track and pave the way for more permanent solutions. And since there are many incentives and investment for solar amongst other renewables, one really can leapfrog fossil fuels. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. This a huge need, as you showed, in that picture of the lack of lights in Africa, I think is a real eye-opener for most of us. Couple questions. One is the intellectual property that you have and the invention that you've created here. Can you talk about what's to keep others coming into the market, assuming as you get successful, how others don't come into your market as well?
I think that if they do come in the market, that's great. The more of them, the better. Because what we would do is we'd carry on and we'd actually use an online platform. Because once you actually have the infrastructure in Africa, you can actually share electricity. Like that's the whole Uber or Airbnb model for electricity. It's like you can order electricity like a pizza. Because some other fellas, they were competing with me. They set up that village, I did this village. It's fine. So that could work.
And then how integral is your wagon to your overall solution? And how do you deal with security issues related to that wagon?
That's a problem, actually. You're going to have to put a GPS in to track it. Locks on the wheels, lock it down. We kind of assume we're going to get some loss, so we accounted for that in the financials. But we're trusting people.
So I actually have a question based on that as well, the business model. I'm a little concerned about trusting people. And I'm wondering, you're relying on a lot of trust in this model. And you're trusting that the solar companies, all those logos you put up there, are not in these villages simply because they don't know there's a demand there yet? Am I to understand you correctly?
That's basically the idea. I mean, there's a village with nothing, no electricity there, and no one's interested in it. So we create some interest in there, and they would actually come in. You're asking more about the business model, I assume.
Yeah. So I'm business is to address a certain pain or problem and to solve that. And you're addressing the lack of electricity for the children that are studying by lamplight. You're also saying that you're addressing a problem that these other companies have, that they are not able to identify a need. So can you talk a little more about that?
Sure. I would say that an energy company in general, they either look for big players or they find it risky to look for the small to medium businesses. But small to medium businesses are integral for the growth of an economy. That's why I say our solution is a quick and dirty method. You haul that electricity right there and it works. There's not much setting up and stuff that a solar company has to do. Maybe you can do the same with a generator, but we want to skip past that. So like Nigeria, they're full of generators. That's what you hear all the time, and there's pollution. So rather go solar, I would say. Hope that helps.
Hi. A few questions from the audience. I'll kind of combine these into one. More about the wagon themselves. First of all, how are you planning on charging the wagon? I mean, is that
right?
Fossil fuel for that? And then, what specific batteries are you using and why?
I would say starting off with lead acid batteries, they're less dangerous. Lithium is probably the best kind, but if you puncture them, they could explode, go on fire. How do you charge them? There's probably two ways. You could either set up a temporary solar farm in the center of a village, and you could actually carry these wagons back and forth as if it's a tree in the center. But what's a little bit easier is actually just to have 5 or 10 solar panels, and you set up a little temporary solution right by the wagon. And that's enough to power things during the day. Then batteries inside will power, it will provide less power, but it'll power fridges and things during the night. So, hope that answers that.
So you're creating demand or utilization of
electricity in these villages. Over what time frame do you think that's going to have to occur before one of the larger companies sees the opportunity and will come with a more permanent solution?
Well, I'm pretty sure that it's not going to happen on the first day. So we'll probably have to give it a few weeks, at least a month. It'll give them time to get comfortable, buy some appliances, and hook it up, and it changes their lifestyle even. They say that it lifts up the per capita income by 40%, which is a tremendous number. It means it's almost like 40% extra, like Christmas bonus. So, time frame, probably hoping for between 1 to 5 months. It could take a while, but if it takes too long, it's not bad. We can still pull out of the area, and they've paid us during that time. Maybe a smaller solar company could take over.
So for the permanent solution provider to come in and make a business out of that, how much time does that take them? So once you've created this demand, a few months, what do they need to do in order to install a permanent solution? What's the time frame around that? What I'm struggling with is you create the demand, and I certainly believe it's going to be created and it's there. What's the gap and the challenge to getting a full solution implemented?
Oh, if you think of materials, materials are either developed locally or probably from China. That's the cheapest source. You probably ship it into a harbor. There's some logistics involved, a truck, and let's say a company deals with that, and they bring a whole solution to the village, and they could probably set it up in a week or two. They already know which houses want what, so they can choose certain size solar panels, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I'm not 100% sure. I can get back to you on the exact time.
That's
but
very good. I mean,
yeah.
obviously, it takes a while to build a power plant and
yeah.
transfer stations and all. The permanent solution is a little more mobile and localized.
Yes, exactly.
Thank you.
I've got a question on the sharing platform.
Yeah.
So help me with, is the main business idea that we sell energy in areas that don't
Yes.
have energy now,
Yes.
and then we turn over that we exit to another company when we leave? Do we continue to make revenue through the sharing platform in the areas that we've seeded, or do we exit that market altogether when we sell to a larger provider?
You can. Ultimately, when you have a sharing platform, you could be anyone almost. And if you've got could even be as simple as you've got a wall socket and you want to share that, well, you can. I mean, some areas, you only get 4 hours of electricity anyway. But let's say you have a solar farm in your backyard and you want to share. It's like an Airbnb. You take a picture of it, put it on the map, and say, I can provide this much. If you come here, I'll give you this much, and you sell it for per pay as you go per kilowatt hour. People usually use up their solar energy, but sometimes they don't. That's probably where the whole energy sharing part comes in. And there's many solar farms around Africa that people don't know about it. If you can imagine a map where you can see there's place where you can get electricity, and you're a traveler, this is good because you have a 4x4, you're traveling across Africa, you just plot a route, join the dots. You say, I'm going to go there, I can refuel, get whatever supplies I need. All right.
Sorry, I'll ask the last question. I guess I'm trying to. Part of this is just my knowledge. So you can help me here.
Sure.
So if I'm going into a village that doesn't have any electricity at all, how do I understand the unit? I understand the concept. How do I actually get the houses or whatever the appliances plugged into it?
Well,
You have to do something at the house, or do you just come out to the unit and plug it in?
kind of assume there's a lot of houses really close by to the wagon.
Sure.
And you could have cabling one to each house, massive big plug socket, and then they could plug all their
Just like
appliances.
one
and
big
things.
one, okay.
Yeah. If solar companies come in, they probably want to do house wiring and things
Right,
like that.
that's what I'm asking you.
So so it's a very ad hoc solution.
Got it, okay.
but,
And then, have you thought? Do you have a target village that you would actually prototype this at?
probably, I was thinking of areas like Cameroon or Nigeria, somewhere a coastal village. Yeah, exactly. Because there's also permit fees when you cross borders in Africa. It'd be like $6,000, So you want to keep it close to the coast, start from there. Probably a village close to Lagos or Abuja or those kind of places. Yes.
Great. Thanks.
All right.
All right.
Thank you very much.